I should start by introducing myself. I'm Ben. Roughly 2 years ago, I walked into my boss's office and resigned my job, and that was in a mainly a finance role, but looking at big food retailers and big food companies. And I left for two reasons. One was the food chain was just in a complete mess, and the second reason was a much more positive one. I felt that now was a time that it was really genuinely possible to make some pretty meaningful change. So I'm going to spend a couple of minutes talking about each of those. Firstly, why I think we need to fix the food system. If you like stats, hopefully you'll enjoy it. I've just got 6 or 7 stats which I think paint the picture pretty clearly. And then I'll spend a couple of minutes talking about how FarmDrop is attempting to solve the issues. So first of all, onto the problem. I guess a pretty good starting point would be that 75% of all of the sales of food in the UK are going through only 4 tills at the moment. That's pretty well known. You might think that's a problem in and of itself, but I think it's important to actually understand why that's a problem. A quick question, does anybody know what percentage of all the money spent on food in this country actually goes to the people who make it? Anyone want to chuck a number out? It's 11%. If you go back to the 1950s in the pre-supermarket era, it was actually more than half, and it's fallen now to 11%, and that's part of the reason why apparently 1 in 4 farming households in the UK actually live below the poverty line, which is a less well-known fact. I think that's a really big problem, not just in and of itself, but what it's led to is significantly widespread factory farming in the UK, such that only 8% of UK farms are now mixed. What do I mean by that term, mixed farms? Any farm which has actually got an output of several different products is a mixed farm. So you can no longer sing Old MacDonald Had a Farm because it just doesn't hold anymore. I've stolen that from the author of a book called Farmageddon, which has recently come out. It's a brilliant book, and he talks about the fallacy of Old MacDonald, and it's all about this idea that they've actually disappeared. There are very few of them left, and it's incredibly important to support them, not just because it's a wonderful romantic notion and we all want to go back there because it reminds us of lovely nursery rhymes, but because of stats like this. UK farmland bird population has more than halved since 1966. But that's a really astonishingly horrible statistic that's worth just thinking about for a second. I could use other statistics. I could talk about the bee population, which has suffered a similar demise. And again, I think that it's to do with factory farming. Now, people may say, yeah, but that's the necessary cost of feeding the population. And those people I would ask to look at this statistic. 40% of food in the UK is actually thrown away. So it's not fair enough to say, well, look, it's just a necessary evil. We need factory farming because we have to get the yields up, otherwise people are going to starve to death. It's not the case. And even worse, 2/3 of people in the UK are apparently either overweight and obese, which is, again, astonishing. It's a brand new statistic from Public Health England. And I think that's got a hell of a lot to do with what MC was talking about in the previous presentation. Because we've got to a position where nearly 4/5 of all the food we buy is from supermarkets, the lion's share of it is processed food. She used a statistic of 65%. And if you're eating food that's stuffed full of sugar and salt and just generally processed, then that's where we've got to. It's actually not where people want to be. Only 1% of food consumed in this country is locally sourced. And if you compare that with this penultimate stat, that's even though more than 70% of people actually want to buy more locally. The picture that I'm trying to paint here is one in which actually we've got a food chain which pretty much everybody is dissatisfied with, whether you're trying to source local food and find that difficult, or whether you're trying to sell it and you're finding that extremely difficult because you're getting murdered by the supermarkets broadly. Thanks for not walking out this pretty depressing 10 slides. I'm going to get into the more positive news now, which, just bear with me, there's a couple of stats here which might seem a little bit more random, but their relevance will out. Online grocery sales in the UK are going up at a rate of about 20% a year. They'll double in the 5 years to 2017, and that's extremely positive. Along with that, nearly 80% of consumers have used a click and collect service at some point over the last year, i.e. they go online, select, order, pay, and then go and pick up the food a couple of days later. That actually presents a huge opportunity for major change. If you take a step back and just put those different stats together, actually what I'm trying to present is a world in which we really don't have to rely on supermarkets. Because they've been around for 50 or 60 years, people think that they're going to be here forever. There's really no reason why they need to be. If the stats are real, and they are, and that's why I've put all the sources on the slides for you to go and check if you want to afterwards, people are actually more and more inclined to go online to buy food. They're more and more inclined to click and collect, and we know they also want to shop locally. So what about actually setting up a food network where people actually go online, they can shop for local food, pay the farmers directly, and then go and pick up their food or have it delivered a couple of days later? And that's the idea of FarmDrop. That's what we're trying to create. It's click and collect local food markets. Specifically, the way they work is not like door-to-door delivery, Amazon, eBay, etc. What we're trying to create are 300 or 400 farm drops dotted across the United Kingdom, and each would be hosted by a person that we call a keeper, and that's a local member of that community. That particular photograph is of FarmDrop's first ever keeper, who's in the audience this evening. And she hosted a number of our FarmDrop pilots last year in northwest London. And her job and the job of the keeper in our model is to assemble neighbours and community members to be the customers of your FarmDrop, to find a venue like a local pub or a school or a community centre that you can use once a week, and also to connect up with food producers as well. And in terms of actually how it works, if you're using it to buy food as a customer, it's 1, 2, 3. You go online, you browse from locally produced food and producers, you place your order, and then the site just sends the money and the orders off to those producers, and you go and pick it up a couple of days later. It's really straightforward. It's a simple idea. What about the money? Well, the money works like this. 80% of everything goes to the producers, 10% goes to the keepers, and we think that's really important because actually they're being rewarded for putting in their time and energy and making the FarmDrop a success. And then FarmDrop retains the last 10%, and that's how we cover our costs. Why do we think people are really going to want to use this, apart from the reasons I've talked about? Well, point-to-point supply, ripping out all of the stuff in the middle, means fresher food, tastier food, more nutritious food, all the stuff that MC was talking about a couple of minutes ago. We also think it fits massively with the resurgence of interest in local community. I think it's fair to say that over the last 10 years, we've probably got quite a lot of evidence that just, big business, one size fits all, Adam Smith, Wealth of Nations, hasn't really worked that well. So actually, our vision of the future is one where people organise themselves into communities and consume products and services that they're buying and selling from each other rather than just big companies. We believe this is a game changer for producers. It does their admin. It finds them customers so they can busy themselves actually producing food rather than doing the marketing. And also, it's going to give them access to data that they can use for future planting decisions and things like that, which they haven't actually had access to in the past. We also have no intention of everybody driving around in thousands of half-full small vans. We want to help producers collaborate on logistics to make that more efficient, to enhance profitability for them as well. This is probably the most important slide in the deck, and albeit the most simple. We're trying to create a no-waste system, and what I mean by that is that if you give a farmer an advance order per the click and collect model, if you order and pay for your goods on a Monday night to take receipt of them 2 or 3 days later, that farmer only actually goes out into the field and pulls the carrot out of the ground because somebody's actually already bought it. That's a massive change. Just rearranging those steps means that you can actually start aspiring towards a zero waste system. And, you know, a vegetable is like any other plant. If you leave it in the ground where it's got its supply of nutrients, it can go for 6, 7, however many months. And that's why we think there's a massive environmental gain as well as a profitability gain for farmers to go down this route. It's also the biggest difference between FarmDrop and, say, a farmer's market. We love farmers' markets, but farmers don't know how much they're going to sell at a farmer's market until they get there, so actually they do tend to create a reasonable amount of waste. This is the team. We're out in Bethnal Green, and there are 9 of us currently. Please help us move forward. We're launching the platform on the 15th of March, having done 15 or so pilots last year, and they were mainly in London. If you'd like to start a FarmDrop, that'd be fantastic. We've got lots of people applying at the moment, which is extremely exciting. Clearly, we're a Cleanweb presentation, so if you are a keen Ruby dev, then come and see me and we'll have a chat as well. And more than anything, though, whether it's via FarmDrop or whoever else, you know, please support local independent food producers. It's very important for all of us that we do that. Thanks very much, and take any questions.